So right at the end here, we have Giovanni. Yes. And then, of course, this is Rajendra. And this is Green and Jeremy. Hey. All right, so I guess all of the films tonight were sort of curated with the idea of placing Singapore as a place in space, and all of the films sort of situate Singapore as that space and that place for us to kind of question ourselves, whether it be the characters or the filmmakers themselves, I suppose, situating yourself in that film. And I wanted to just ask, I suppose, for you to think after this number of years that have passed, while looking at the film again, what exactly are some of your thoughts at this point in time? But I guess I'll start with Raj, because I wanted to actually find out what your thoughts now that you're seeing your film restored in 4K, and after so many years that have passed by, and of course the copy that you have in your possession then all this time has been a VHS copy, right? Because you couldn't, yeah. So I suppose looking at it now, I'm wondering what kind of thoughts or emotions that must be going through you.
Well, this film was made almost half a century ago, and that time we didn't have sponsors. I see all of the films have a lot of sponsors here and there. Even the Teshi Institute has come up. So I am lucky that I was able to make my own film with my own money. And when I see the restored film, it's almost like 16 mm film, which was originally shot in 16 mm film. So thank you very much for transferring to HD.
I'm just wondering if you had a chance to, I suppose, relook, now that you're looking at the film, was there anything that you felt you might have done differently?
I don't think so. Because that time I was young and I had a lot of dreams, and whatever I made that time, I don't think I can make it now, because that time was really made with passion, But as the time passes and we become more practical, so the passion a little bit comes down. So, and the other things surface more. But still, I would like to do differently another film or same title, Sunshine Singapore, if I have the money. Thank you.
So guys, how would you see, watching, I suppose, Roger's film in the 60s and 70s, and then, now being in your time, how would you respond to that? And thinking about Singapore when you made it and Singapore now. Are there any thoughts that are running through your heads? Any of you might want to just pick it up from there?
Actually, I'm just amazed by the restoration process. Because my film was the one after Rajendra's, and I think it looked older than his film.
The beauty of technology, yes.
Like some of the shots of the people on the streets, you feel like it's so amazing how clear and how well restored it feels like this. It feels like you just saw the people last week, and never mind the period look and everything. Everything looks so amazingly current.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Green, any thoughts?
About his film?
No, about
about his film, when I was watching the film, I was thinking that what have we done to Singapore? It was so beautiful then. It was so spacious, and I really miss the Singapore, and sometimes I wish we could go back there. Anyway, we have to move on, right? So, about the two questions you talked about just now, about how when we look at our films, what's our response, and in fact, every time I watch the film, my films, like, I just want to destroy them most of the time. Destroy the hard disk, you know what I mean? But not a very nice thing to talk about when in the AFA showcase. But that's what I feel every time I make a film or watch a film that I make. And also the things that, whether I can change the things that I did. Yes, every time I watch a film, I say, oh, I wish I could change this, I wish I could change that. I have to say that I think that within that circumstances when I would make that film, I think that's the best I could do. And I'm until the day I'm always. I mean, there's so many things I wish I can change, but I'm proud of what I've done. That's all.
Any thoughts, Giovanni?
Sure. Yeah, I think I really love the selection of films. I think they are all blending together now in my mind, and they are all like these impressionistic postcards of Singapore, and they are always telling similar stories, you know, like very different but similar. Like it was always about individuals that have to escape or like explore this thing which is Singapore. So I feel very happy to be part of this exploration, being like a foreigner visiting.
Yeah. Does the audience have any questions, in response to Giovanni's sort of observation about escaping Singapore, or finding a space to escape from that life? Is there anything that you want to ask about that? No? Or perhaps, yes?
Do I need the mic for recording purposes? Okay. So, hi. So, watching all of your films, wonderful films, lovely short films. Thank you, AFA, anyway. And I think one of the comments, one of the things that I've immediately started to think about, especially pertaining to what Giovanni have said, is with regards to the artifice of everything, because even though most of the short films are actually made in this half of the century, a lot of them don't look that way. And there's a lot of exploration of urban spaces, memories, and impressions, as well as a lot of that sort of aestheticized viewpoint into how Singapore is represented. And I would just like to ask all of the filmmakers here with regards to their take on this representation that they've undertaken of this place, and some of perhaps, just some of the observations that you have had when making the films, or some troubles with the senses or whatever, just things.
Yeah. Would anyone like to attempt response?
I'll start. Actually, when I made my film, the medium was actually one of my key considerations, because I wanted to make a film on Super 8 film. So that was made on Super 8mm film. So I didn't think so much about the big picture. It was more how I could play around with the film, and because Super 8 is not very high-res, I thought of playing around with a lot of icons and iconography and things. So if you watch the film, you notice things are not very subtle. I play a lot with obvious images or representations of Singapore, sometimes with a little bit of irony. And also I tried to, I guess it's also like what you see about the foreign worker and all that. It's also a representation of, it represents what I observed of Singapore at that time. Apparently nothing has changed. So what you see is really an attempt to play around with these different symbols. Yeah, and yeah, in terms of the landscape and all that, actually a lot of it was improvised. So I would say incidental to the film, except for the last scene's Singapura restaurant, because I was always intrigued by the name of the restaurant. It's a pretty old restaurant. Never eaten there until it caught my attention, and I wanted to capture it on the film.
For my film, I think there are three main characters besides the taxi driver and the old lady. And Singapore, the city itself, is one of the main characters, I guess. But when I look at the film and responding to your question, is that if I have to make the film again, I'm such a very different filmmaker now. I mean, I made the film 2006, and I probably won't choose an old lady again. And if, maybe if it's old lady, it will be a very different character. And also the location, I'm sure it will be very different. I probably won't choose those locations. You know, who knows, man? But we choose, I don't know. You know, so it'll be very, very different film. And maybe I can make this film again, you know, with a different screen of 2018. You know, it will be very different. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and Raj, for yourself, like in terms of the symbolism and representation.
Oh, well, the symbolism, I think, is in all the Indians there. Watch any Hindi movie or Tamil movie or any movie, they always a symbolism. Even the girl and boy kissing, don't have a show. Bring the two flowers together and you say they are in love. So symbolism is in us. Whatever we see, whatever we think beyond what is there. We just don't think, oh, this is so and so. We go beyond this or behind this, not behind this, and see what are the things that touch our heart. So the symbolism comes from your heart and then goes to your mind and comes to the film. That's how I would like to say.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked for example, the music in your film looked sounded very modern to me, like very strong, and I liked the way actually you were in relationship with everything you were shooting, and in my case it was exactly the same exercise for me, to understand Singapore, and of course understanding who I was back then when I was shooting it. Of course, like this young European actress, of course, depicts our own interpretation of Singapore, like maybe in the first days you are here, and then this taxi driver is representing exactly the deeper character and what Singapore has to offer to a foreigner. And of course, in my take was like a fairy tale, right? Like this sort of artificial, plastic-made fairy tale made with tilt-shift lenses that makes everything so small and so toy-looking. But yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful experience for me, like very long to take the best shots I could. So it was always the same. And I really enjoyed doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for the benefits of the current cohorts of the filmmakers. Yeah, for the benefits of the current cohorts of the filmmakers, we're talking about more than 10 years ago, where I'm sure you have a lot of difficulties in trying to produce a film. And it's a challenge at the time. The support level, everything you may have to do yourself, and also how much time do you need to go through these difficulties. It may be interesting for us, for the future generation to try to understand your point of view and your experiences. So that will be very good for the future generation, how they're going to learn all this. Singapore is such a small country, you know. So whereas in the US it's huge and they have so many years, you know, more than 80 years of the film experiences and all this have been brought down. Singapore is still very new in that sense. So even the schools now, they are expanding and all these things. I heard about a lot of schools here in Singapore now, they are encouraging students to go into filming and all this. So just share with us your difficulties, the challenge that you have gone through in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe just for you to share perhaps one of the difficulties that you encountered in the making of the film. Yeah.
Well, mine was very simple. Like it wasn't. I was supported doing it because I was studying at NYU, so we had nice gear, a lot of great crew, like members that were all my partners in crime at school. And but one of the biggest challenges was actually to find that taxi. And so I remember struggling so hard, at the very last hours before the shooting, and the taxi was there. It wasn't there yet, and it arrived very, very late. And so it's always it doesn't matter how much resources you have. Filmmaking is always difficult to a certain extent, and as a director, you just have to surf the wave and try solutions and follow what your master plan was. That of course changes over time. So it's always very struggling, very tiring experience, but it's definitely the best. I encourage everybody to shoot a film on his own.
Well, filming this Sunshine Singapore, it was all in my head what I really want. But I have only 16mm camera and one lens. That also 50mm lens. And I managed to do all the shots with that lens except one. Once I just came across fisheye lens. I don't know from where I got. So that one I fixed to my 50mm lens, and I saw beautiful, all the rays are spreading. It was so difficult to go and find sunrise in Singapore. I really had to chase. I didn't have the car, I didn't have the bike. I had the only transport means was the bus. So I used to go in the bus. By the time I reached, other clouds are coming up. Disappointed? Never mind. It was a passion. So to get one shot of sun rays, which I wanted, which was in my mind, sometimes it took weeks, But I didn't give up. I said, I want this. Then finally got it. So for the young filmmakers and all that, don't give up. What you have, your dreams, make it come true. That's all.
My film is also a self-financed film. We shot the film, I think, within 4 or 5 days. And every night, we wanted to shoot the film just in the night, without anybody in the street. So every night we only have 5 hours. So there are a lot of scenes and only many setups. So every time we change the camera, because we use this, we need to put the camera outside the car. So we didn't have the money to get the gear, so we use this rope and tapes and whatever you use to hang onto the glass and things like that. So every changes is half an hour. So can you imagine so many setup and every time there's half an hour is gone. So it was quite a tough shoot, but we managed to shoot as much as we could. And Vincent T, the actor, is there, and most of the time it's just one, two takes there, and then he have to memorize the lines and do all the things in the camp. Yeah. So it was quite a tough shoot, but we enjoyed ourselves. Yeah.
Actually, there wasn't. I don't think my shoot was very challenging. The biggest challenge was actually using Super 8 film because every roll is so short and you can't plan. Sometimes the film just stops halfway, so some of your planned shots can't go according to plan. Actually, what I feel is a more interesting question to answer to what this gentleman asked about challenges. I think actually it's all relative. I remember when I made this film in 2007, I felt very fortunate that there were a lot of grants out there. I didn't know that the government gives grants for making films. Of course, now fast forward 10 years, a lot of students have fantastic equipment and all that, and 10 years ago looks so much worse than now. And of course, if I compare myself to Rajendra's time, it's a world of difference. But I feel also sometimes constraints is the mother of creation. When you I find that faced with certain constraints, certain ideas are born out of that constraint, and you can't like, for example, Rajendra's film. A lot of things inside, sometimes not very coherent, but you just can't replace what the end product was, and it's beautiful.
So there seem to be 4 key words around about there, about being innovative, being creative, having a passion, and not giving up. So I guess that seemed to sum up what you guys are saying. Are there any responses from the floor? Yes, right at the back. Somebody can...
I just want to comment that the selection is actually very interesting to a Singaporean. And I think we start off with a look at Singapore as exotica, like in the tropics, right? And I think that sort of theme that comes along. And then perhaps the first one would be insider looking at Singapore. And then the last film by Giovanni it's a typical thing that we hear about Singapore being hyper-realistic. So it's actually a very Caucasian gaze. And then if I look at the credits, it's also very Caucasian, foreigner in a way as well. So it's a bit tiring to, from my point of view, it's a bit tiring to hear that. So, yeah. So I have, so that's my comment. But I think it's just interesting how you sequence it out and the order as well. So the middle portion will be about an older person looking at Singapore. So whether it's Passenger or whether it's Curry Fish Head. So I have a question for, let me see. I have a question for the girl in red sarong, to Jeremy. So the twist at the end, when the girl, suddenly there's a twist of the story that she gets married to a Japanese person and then her life transformed. I just want to ask you whether that is like your commentary or it's a parallel Singapore story, because we transform ourselves within 30 years from third world to first. And it's when we were third world in 1965, unemployment rate and poverty and everything. So it's quite kind of similar to what the female protagonist is feeling, and it's a sudden transformation. Yeah, maybe I'm not sure why the twist. Yeah.
Well, I certainly didn't think that deeply when I made the film. All I wanted to show was a change of fortunes. I think it's a very universal theme about how people go from rags to riches. It was basically as simple as that. It was just a rags to riches progression, but maybe because she was wearing that symbolic sarong kebaya, so maybe when you see the end product, it means something else. I guess that was part of my intended effect as well. But I didn't really think about the film so much in theory. I just went ahead to make it, and I know that putting this icon and these things together will create this certain effect, and that was what I was actually trying to do.
I have another, just a quick comment for Green Zeng. I think as a Singaporean who understands and speaks Teochew and who is able to differentiate Teochew and Hokkien, so it just speaks to me on many levels. And I'm quite close to my older relatives. So hearing those sort of terms being used and expressions, I think it's fantastic. And I think the actress is also quite familiar to me. I mean, see her on TV. And I think she's also not feeling well, not too sure. So I think that's a very good way to honor her and her contributions to the theatre scene and TV scene in Singapore. So I'm very touched by Passenger. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I don't speak a word of Teochew.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that you I don't know whether it's intentional or what, but it's a Teochew speaking to a Hokkien.
Yes.
So it's mutually understandable, intelligible, yes. But I think there is that sort of dynamism in that.
Yes.
So it's very interesting.
Well, I just want to say that I mean, language is always at least for me, when I make a film, every time the language is the most important part, and I always struggle with it, and I always base the language on the characters in the film, and based on them, the language will sort of somehow, sort itself out. And of course, the very first thing that I wanted to do was, of course, use Cantonese because I'm a Cantonese. But after we auditioned the actors, and we found Mei Guan Jie, the old lady, she's Teochew, and of course we will not ask her to use Cantonese because that's a language. Also, I find the dialect itself is because certain subtlety that you cannot express using Mandarin. So we want to retain that also. And for Vincent T's character, he spoke Hokkien most of the time, but maybe a bit of Teochew here and there. Yeah. So that's how also people used to communicate, right? You use Cantonese, I use Teochew, or use Hokkien, and then we somehow figure a way to communicate. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the film and find Mei Guan Jie's acting interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question here, right in front.
Hi, I really enjoyed today's films. I really feel so proud to be Singaporean. Okay, anyway, I have a question to ask Rajendra. So you use two soundtracks, like most of the time quite on loop, especially the second track. May I know what are those soundtracks and what do they mean to you? Like, is it like, yeah, I really like the second one, it's really very cool. And to Jeremy, because like what you indicated in the film, that sarong is actually a Malay traditional costume, right? So why do you choose to have a Chinese profile, like Chinese language instead of Malay? Because I kept thinking that she was actually Malay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Well, she was actually modeled after a Malaysian friend, because I think I just wanted an immigrant, no, not immigrant, like a foreign worker character. So she was just modeled after somebody I know, and I like the irony of a Malaysian wearing something that represents Singapore, and yeah.
Well, I had no problems because there was no dialogue, there was no commentary, there was nothing. You can interpret each image according to your own imagination, which touches your heart and mind. And I'm sure everybody won't have the same meaning. When there's a commentary, I bind you people to think my way, that way. But this one, like a little bit experiment, you think your way. I gave you dewdrops. I gave you ladies here, all the sun rays going through the hair, and then she's combing her hair. So there are a lot of, you can call it symbols and all that. Any meaning you want to take out is fine. You like it or don't like it is individual. Everybody has own style. They all have their own style beautifully. They have expressed themselves the way they know best. So every film, every has some meaning, and there are always some of the good things to be seen in the film. So, what I was saying, I had no problem with dialogues. I didn't direct anybody to follow my script. And the music and all this to enhance the image. I had the music first, then I film. You see the tree, camera going this way. Because the music was in my head. I have heard the music. You think I can just do like no way. Because I could hear the music. So then I go according to the music. Sun rays also, there are boats out there and shimmering and all. That also is a music, a different type of music. So I played with the music, then
yeah, I guess we have time for just one more question. If anybody wanted to, have one last question. Okay.
Not really a question, but a comment. I'd like to congratulate and thank you guys for shot the film and show. And in the 18 years that I've been in Singapore, I've seen the film industry in Singapore has been changing and has been doing more and more, and then dealing with more and more issues that are close to our hearts. I think Singapore has changed, and then I was so glad to see the aging movie, one of them is being chosen to be shown, because I think that one can be explored make it a longer story. But look forward to seeing what we saw tonight, and then to see how Hollywood is looking at Singapore in Crazy Rich Asian that will be coming up in August. There's a different kind of perspective how Hollywood is looking at Singapore. So I congratulate all of you and thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm really glad that you've there's so many perspectives, and I guess that's the whole point, that the short films give all of us a perspective and a chance to look at our country in different ways, and maybe to find ourselves in some way or other, through that. And I hope that you'll come back on Saturday and Sunday to watch the films that have been made by a whole new generation of filmmakers, and that you'll come to also explore that imagination and that particular sort of exploration of themselves. So I wish you a very good night, and thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next 2 days again. Thank you, and thank you to our filmmakers.